how significant, and if we want to be independent, be dependent on no one, work quietly with our own hands, become cancel proof and become a generalist and not just a specialist, and more independent, and be able to pass these things down to our children. How important is it in terms of location, where a person chooses to raise their family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I hadn't thought too much about that. There in my book, it's not location dependent. I mean, we talk about farming, but that's just one of the 61 trades that I cover in the book. And so It really depends on what you're being called into, what you sense that the Lord has for your family. Let me answer it this way. One of the exercises that we take families through is to kind of do a survey of the unique gifts of each member of your family. What are the passions? What are the gifts? What are the callings? What is your experience, background? Kind of just to map out each person in your family, starting with mom and dad, and then doing it with the kids, and then try to do the math. So basically, what is this all adding up to? What is our family good at doing together? Not just what is dad doing, and then going off to dad's job, and mom watches the kids in the household. But as a family, what can we do together? That's what I wanted to figure out. What could we do together in this day and age that would be sustainable? And what we found out is it was a mix of things. So we're involved a little bit in farming. We're involved in teaching. We're involved in writing. For some people, they're doing things like Airbnb. They're doing things like open up some custom blacksmithing, kind of metalworking shop. Some people are doing silversmithing and goldsmithing. And there's a whole number of different ways in which families can work together towards a vocation or multiple vocations. And so it really depends on what you feel called to. Getting back to your question in terms of location, there is obviously a huge benefit in rural versus city. You're going to have a lot more freedom, just right on down to the zoning laws. I mean, when we moved out of Minneapolis, we moved to southern Minnesota, but I couldn't get chickens where I was in Minneapolis, and we had about a 10th acre little lot right on the kind of right in the southern part of Minneapolis, but great little neighborhood. But it couldn't do that much. So For me, it was a big deal to get out somewhere where we had a little bit of space. We had some more liberties in terms of what we could do. A lot of times you get further away from the city, you have lower property taxes, there's lower crime, there's benefits. And today a lot of people can telecommute. And so you're not as restricted in terms of having to be in the office. Now, whether that's a long-term situation or not, depends on your job. But I would say that, rural is certainly preferable. If you want to go into farming, and I would encourage everybody to try to grow at least a kitchen garden, to try to get some basic hands-on experience with growing, even if all you're doing is making salsa at the end of the year, or growing some pumpkins or some squash to keep over winter. Just do it because God created us to tend gardens. I mean, that's in the beginning, that's what he did with Adam. It was the first occupation. So it's in our DNA, and there's a lot of theology in the garden. But besides that, if you are interested in going into farming, you want to look at other things like, what's the annual rainfall? I mean, can that place be sustained without irrigation? There's a lot of props out there for a lot of farms that will not be around if there's some kind of crisis. So you want to try to get into a climate which would be a lot more hospitable to the kind of activities you want to carry out with your family. So
that's really helpful.
I guess that's kind of a broad answer.
No, that was a great answer, though.
Okay.
So in general, rural tends to be better than cities. But then also, I thought what you said that was so helpful was just taking a tally of the family, and not just dad, and not even just dad and mom, but looking at the children, talking to them, seeing their desires, their giftings, seeing what can we do together. And the hodgepodge thing was helpful, that it could be a mix of things, because at first I was just thinking, man, farming.
Benjamin Franklin, right? He was a statesman. He was a publisher. He was an author. He was an
Right.
inventor. George Washington was also an orchardist. He was a military general. I mean, these guys, they, like we've been talking about this evening, is they were generalists. They had a lot of
Right.
different skills. And the nice thing, if you can spread yourself out across a couple of these things, let's say 3, 4, maybe even 5 different trades, let's call it, you're not putting so much pressure to try to make up the income from any one thing. So you're not trying to make $60,000-$80,000 a
Right.
year from farming, which is incredibly difficult to do. But maybe you could make, $10,000 a year from breeding animals and selling sheep. One of the things we do is sell purebred sheep. And so maybe you can raise some of your income that way. And that's a big deal. But then maybe you're gardening to the extent where you're not buying a lot of food in the grocery store anymore. Kind
Right.
of a nice thing to have if like the grocery store shelves are going empty.
Right.
Besides the fact whether or not you're getting paid for it, these are some nice things to build into the system, bring the supply chain back home. So there's these advantages to just having a more broad skill set. And you also don't burn yourself out trying to ramp up so heavily in just one area. So that's kind of the more having a mix of trades approach.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would consider supporting Right Response Ministries, we'd be incredibly grateful. You can do so by going to rightresponseministries.com/donate to give your gift of any amount. If you're not able to support us financially, that's okay. You can still support us in a great regard simply by subscribing to our YouTube channel, clicking the bell, and of course sharing our content with all your friends and family. We can't do this without you, your support, and your prayers. So thank you.